our esteemed colleague, Travis Heneveld, who I believe is sitting in sunny California today, and who is leading the work that is underway now through N50 and Geeks Without Frontiers in helping to drive digital inclusion for those tribal communities that were referenced just now. So with that, Travis, I will hand the mic into your good care.
Thanks, David. Can you hear me?
Yep.
You got me. Okay. We can bring on, I think everybody's here. Jesse, Janet, Phil, and Andrew. I think everybody's here.
Morning.
So welcome everyone. Thanks for being here, and really happy to be sort of what I started at the beginning of today, and it's amazing to go from Austin, Texas to a sort of a worldview from Paul in terms of innovation and global impact, and now we're diving into what I spend most of my day doing with the folks we have here. So I'm so grateful to be part of this panel. I think let's start out. We're talking about digital inclusion in the tribal context, yeah, I think Geeks has been working for a few years now on feasibility studies and the sort of business sustainability side of this whole digital inclusion element, and I think you've seen that in some of the questions already. But without further ado, let's introduce our panelists here. Maybe Chairperson Janet, we can start with you.
Hello, I'm Janet Hansen, Lone Pine Paiute Shoshone Reservation. And this is actually going to be my first time on a panel discussion. And I'm honored to have joined today.
Yeah, welcome. Glad to have you here. Jesse, you want to?
Sure, I can go next. Jesse Archer. I'm the president of NumuNetworks. We're a nonprofit, and we work closely with tribes like Lone Pine, and Chairperson Hansen here to help plan, build, and sustain tribal networks for the people.
Thanks, Jesse. And I think we have Phil here. I think I saw him on there. Is he still there?
Yep. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm here. Hi, everyone. My name is Phil Fowler. I am the president of New Communications Alliance, which is a tribal broadband alliance that brings the goals of each individual tribe together to try to figure out our common activities that we can. I'm also the IT director for the Bishop Paiute tribe.
Thanks, Phil. Glad to have you here too. And last but not least, Andrew.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to participate. My name is Andrew Brickweg. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Etheric Networks. We got to know the folks at Lone Pine and NumuNetworks through some discussions about their fixed wireless system at the Lone Pine tribe over the last year, and I'm happy to participate today. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Andrew. So yeah, I'd like to dive right into it. We're so used to having our regular talks about the operations and the challenges at hand. So it's nice to have a bit of time here to talk about take a step back and look at this in terms of digital inclusion. I'm going to throw it right out there to start. When you hear digital inclusion in the tribal context, I guess what does it mean? And let's try and think about, is there a vision or a place to look forward to be at, and then where do we focus to get there?
Okay, I'll field that one off the bat if I may. So I think digital inclusion is going to be tribe specific. And as an example with Lone Pine, I think we are very lucky, very blessed to have to work with a tribe whose traditional core values are that of inclusivity. It's very much baked into their traditions, their their government to give everyone a say. And so that was a really good starting place, as well as having leadership that is very much open to sharing our work in order to help other tribal nations. So as far as inclusivity goes, as an example with Lone Pine, we built off of, I would say, their traditional core values and try to apply the best application of technology to it. One example, if I may hand it off to Chairwoman Hansen, is that the government itself is very close to a pure democracy, as close as you can get, in my opinion. And one of the pillars that they instilled in our team is that we need to give everyone a say. And there's a couple of ways we did that. So, and that was really by building out, well, number one, planning and including as much as we can the priorities of the community, what they cared about, and then building, I guess, networks to connect them. So giving everyone a say.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I can say from Newcom's perspective that when we started out with these projects, both at the Bishop tribe and the Lone Pine tribe, and then also with Mono Lake and Bridgeport, what we started with thinking about digital inclusion was pretty much just how can we get people online, how can we assist people on getting better internet connections, getting better digital literacy skills. But as we've moved forward and started to put together plans for this network, or these series of networks, a lot of our digital inclusion is now starting to come into assisting other tribes with planning, both physical network planning and administrative structure planning. We're starting to delve into workforce development. We think that that's a very important part of our digital inclusion, by having a tribal digital workforce that can help to support these networks and keep them up and running. And those are two of the big ways that I think that they are going to advance digital inclusion in the tribal space in a way that we just didn't really see when we first started working on these.
Interesting. Chairperson Hansen, you want to add anything, or we can move to the next question too? Or Andrew, if you have anything.
I don't have anything to add on that. So, thank you.
Oh, I would go ahead, Janet. I'm sorry, my apologies.
Well, speaking of, I was just reading my talking points, and for us in the past, it's been a struggle with communications. And now that we're moving forward in the digital capacity, that like for the tribe here, it's becoming important, one, connections through broadband, internet service, and now devices, and being able to connect virtually with any of our tribal members worldwide. And so with NumuNetworks, with Jesse and his team, we've been able to, like, I think we're halfway there. And we've also implemented policies, but what I'm hearing from tribal members is a lot of the things now is connectivity and being able to access devices, because we are a tribe that is, like Jesse was saying, we're a general council, and so every tribal member has a say, and so they want to be heard out there. And so being able to get that to that point of being digital devices and being able to get the internet service would be great. And so I think that's what we're moving towards. And we just implemented a virtual policy so that all tribal members can connect. And it's been a great accomplishment.
Right, that was a pretty
You
significant.
want to say a bit more about that, Jesse? I mean, there was a question in the chat about digital inclusion examples. Maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to just build off of Chairperson Hansen. I say two of three important things were partly achieved in working with this to create digital inclusion on the reservation. Number one is creating the infrastructure on which tribal members can connect to. And then the next part is getting them the devices that they need to access the network. And then I think the third pillar of that is going to be training on those devices and safe digital behaviors online. I think I don't want to speak for the entire tribe or Chairperson Hansen, but I think the goals are quite large for a small tribe, and they intend to connect, I would say, close to 100% of their population. So I think those three core steps, getting the infrastructure, the tools, and the training in place to create a nationwide connected tribe with highly skilled, knowledgeable people. We're taking good steps towards that, I think.
And if I could add to that, I wish he was here for the meeting, but our CEO at Etheric has a vision for a tribal fiber backbone similar to what Scenic has, and he'd like to see what he calls the First Peoples fiber backbone and connecting all the tribes in the country. And when you talk about digital inclusion, I mean, that's taking, I guess, maybe a little step further, but we spent a lot of time over the last couple years researching all the different California tribal governments and other broadband groups and finding out what their needs were and trying to form a broadband plan that works with what people already have and enhances it. As opposed, we're one of the largest winners of RDOF in California, and it still hasn't been finalized. But as part of our planning stages, we started to look at all those different groups and the challenges they had, as well as the opportunities, trying to figure out how we could leverage the funds and our services to enhance their networks.
Yeah, okay, cool. I think on those three levels, infrastructure, devices, and training, I mean, you've got some examples, right? Maybe Phil or Jesse, you could pick one of the three and talk about it, and a concrete example for the audience to.
I would throw this one over to Phil. I think this is probably a good opportunity to talk about the IBEAT program. If you're prepared.
Yeah, let's talk about IBEAT. And I also I thought it would be a good time to mention the tech fair that we put on earlier this week. I think this is Paiute tribe. The tribe invited several vendors and digital stakeholders, equipment manufacturers, partners from N50 to come and join the community for a little barbecue and to show the community at large what the future has to offer as far as our broadband projects are coming along. A lot of it was oriented towards orientation for workforce training, but we didn't actually sign up anybody for training at that time. It was really more just to bring these technologies to the community, show everybody what it's all about, and get everybody excited for these projects. And it was really, really successful. Everybody that we brought in said that the community was engaged at every step of the way, through every booth. One thing that we did is we sort of dangled lunch as a carrot for everybody coming to the meeting, and they would have to go around to each booth and get 10 stamps in order to get themselves a free burger or hot dog and chips and soda, and so forth. We did expect a few people to just kind of go booth to booth and get their stamps done fulfill their requirement and get their free food and go home. But what really happened is that everybody ended up stopping at each of those stations, engaging with the people that were giving the presentation, and really getting excited and learning more about technology and what we're going to be bringing to the table in the new broadband project. So that was a really successful, I thought, outreach and digital inclusion session for us. And the follow-on for that is going to be the IB program, which is short for the Indigenous Broadband Employment Accelerator Program. So what this really is going to be is, this is going to be a job training and organization center and initiative. It's not just something that's in a building that we think we're going to be able to use to develop the digital workforce of the future here in Indian country and for the tribes that are included in the New Communications Alliance and others that that wish to join us in the future. So what we're going to be trying to do is improve the ability of tribal entities, rural businesses, and our rural communities to create high-wage jobs in the area. We're fairly well sectioned off from the rest of California, and our nearest city practically is Reno, Nevada. That means that getting the digital workforce here to do the jobs that are needed on the ground already is really, really difficult. It's hard for us to find network professionals, hard for us to find tower climbers, administrators and installers all across the board. So we're hoping that we can use the IB program to train that workforce regionally that we need in order to support this network. And our partners in that program are the Lone Pine Paiute and Shoshone tribe, which is our lead applicant and really helped us to get this thing off the ground. The Native Resources Economic Development Department, NRED, also part of Lone Pine. NumuNetworks, that's Jesse and Mariah doing the heavy lifting there. New Communications Alliance, that's us, and that's our loosely knit group of regional tribes, including the Bridgeport Indian Colony, Mono Lake Kutsadika tribe, and of course, last but not least, the N50 project, which has been huge on helping us get this off the ground and just visualize what it's going to take in order to make these projects happen.
Mm-hmm. I'd just like to add, there's one more small example and give a thanks and a shout out to the Lone Pine Paiute Shoshone leadership, past and present, because as Phil said, they really are courageous and take the lead on so many things for our team, our coalition of tribes here. And one example being, as Phil was mentioning, planning to roll interested tribal members into the IB program, into that training program. And I believe it was this week, Lone Pine announced a new sort of an entry-level position, which would be a virtual meeting coordinator. And this is something that's needed by the community to organize meetings just like this and webinars. And I believe that this position, starting at a very small tribe, in a very narrow scope of responsibilities, will then grow and build and be folded into trainings like the IB program to create highly skilled tribal members and place them in highly paid positions.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting and it's important. It's good you mentioned that, Jesse, because in a program like this, every tribe has stepped up and you know, put their, I would say, the way they can contribute to it. I mean, there's always matching requirements for these types of programs, and that isn't where we've had the issue in building it, right? And Lone Pine, like you say, as the lead applicant as well, we're really grateful for that. I guess, I mean, what I'd like to do to tie into that funding element a bit is, I mean, you know, there's all this money out there. We're in a once in a lifetime or more than that opportunity in terms of, you know, everything around broadband access and adoption in Indian country. And I mean, what sort of guidance or words of wisdom, you know, based on where we are now in terms of how should that be, where should that be focused on, and what should be able to fit under eligible programming for digital inclusion?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I think I can take a stab at that one real quick because with each one of our grants that we've put forward to try to get some of this work done, there have been some a big three that we like to try to check off for each of our grant applications, and that is for telemedicine or telehealth, long distance learning, and economic development. If we can bring in an angle for each of our projects that incorporates all three of those digital opportunities, it really gives us a leg up on getting our funding and support for these programs. So I think that really, I mean, that's kind of the thrust of our digital inclusion programs when it gets down to it. If we can, you know, increase economic development by having better paying jobs and more opportunities for online learning or distance work. So reliable internet communications so that people can, you know, can work online instead of having to, you know, commute or move out of the area. And then of course, telehealth is a big one here, especially with everybody being so spread out. It can be really beneficial to be able to have that link with a doctor or some sort of a primary care specialist without having to get in the car for several hours. So these, I think these are really kind of our core digital inclusion efforts here, and what we try to invest in with our grants that we apply for.
Thanks, Phil. Any other panelists?
Well, I just saw a question from the group. How is being digitally connected led to other opportunities for inclusion? Number one, it was a motivator. If I can ask that, it's a motivator to squad up, to create a team. Our initial success planning and building out networks led to further success and team building things. And it's already showing and producing impacts for us as a smaller tribe. One example being now that we are including other tribal nations, we have the ability to collectively bargain, use demand aggregation as a term that we learned through our team, which makes us stronger as tribal governments. And we've already been able, just as a quick example, been able to negotiate down with certain vendors upwards of 600% of their quotes to us when we were just a single tribe. But when we come back as, you know, 2 and 3 and 4 tribal nations, you know, those pricing quotes and offers get much more attractive and beneficial, especially to a smaller tribe, smaller rural tribes.
Yeah, it was mentioned in an earlier session, how it starts with partnerships. So I'm glad you say that, Jesse. You see a common theme there around partnerships of all kinds. Chairperson Hansen, I know we've talked about this in the past. I mean, back to the how it should be used, and we talked about economic development, right? What do you? I know there's some other areas, right, where there could be, once you're connected, right? Once you're digitally connected, how it can link up with economic development opportunities.
Oh yeah, like the housing.
Yes, we have a housing project, and in one of our awards, we've included that for affordable connected homes. They're all so that they're hooked up to fiber optic, and they're basically able from their own home, can work there, education if need be. But they're, that's in our small home project, starting off with like 20 units. And so the whole purpose of that was to be a affordable digital connective home.
If I just want to add a little bit, Janet, I think there was also the opportunity that had been discussed too, because of housing costs. Rental costs are so high in Inyo County. It's almost impossible to afford housing or rental homes on that in this area. It's just outrageous for being such a rural place. So we hope to combine housing and broadband connection to make economic projects much more attractive, not only to tribal members, but to outside entities wanting to work within the tribal reservation, within our borders.
Right.
Okay. Well, I'm going to throw another thing out there. This is more, I think for the audience could be interesting too. It's about the environment, right? We always talk about climate change and how can connectivity, and California with the wildfires and everything else, but I'm specifically interested around water. And this is a huge, the W word. So maybe digital inclusivity and water. Let's maybe talk 5 minutes about that.
Oop, I'm muted. Janet, with your permission, maybe I could speak a little bit about how the water is used in Lone Pine a little bit.
Yes.
I guess one example is the historic relationship between the government and access to water, whether that's 1,000 years ago or where we are today. It's just as important. And the reservation of Lone Pine has its own municipal water supply, as well as water supplied for irrigation purposes. Now, the infrastructure there is old, if not deteriorating, and needs to be replaced. And this has a massive effect on the entire community, who depends on this often to grow gardens or to water their livestock or to keep their lawn. So the idea would be to basically allow the tribe to monitor, analyze, and measure depth to water, surface water flow, and all of these things that are critical to the tribe and its exercise of sovereignty over its own land and water. If you are unfamiliar with the area, this valley and the tribes, just like Lone Pine Supply, are the primary water source for Southern California, and one of the largest economies in the world. And the unstoppable thirst and need and growth and demand for water from Southern California has had massive environmental impacts on where we're at, specifically the Owens Valley Dry Lake. It was one of the largest lakes on the West Coast and has been completely drained and desiccated to provide water for Southern California. What that has created is one of the single largest sources of air pollution in the Western Hemisphere. I'm sure Chairperson Hansen has much better or more valid stories than I do about how that has affected their community, but we're talking about water quality and air quality. Specifically, that can have and have had serious environmental and public health impacts on the Lone Pine Reservation. So as far as inclusivity goes, we want to be able to create a a system. You leverage our networks, leverage our technology and our communications to be able to, number one, measure and quantify our water, because at every angle, someone is trying to take that water and land from us. And then to be able to protect ourselves. That is from the threats of air pollution, as well as the environmental threats from cones of depression, from the water being drained out from underneath us, as well as our ability to survive and live as a tribe and create sustainable programs like food sovereignty programs. All of this is related to water, and water and land must be monitored constantly where we are. So I hope that wasn't too far off of a tangent. But.
I think it's important, you know, especially for folks joining from further away. It's a good, it, you know, puts it in perspective, but also shows the linkage all of a sudden between, you know, digital connectivity and issues that are, you know, bigger than all of us combined. So and yeah, to sort of moving on from there, I mean, you mentioned the S word, Jesse, there for the first time. I mean, I think we talk about data sovereignty anyway in the digital inclusion context. But I think for this audience, it would be also helpful to link, you know, there's tribal sovereignty and then how that fits with the digital, you know, transformation, I would say. Maybe some just talk about that for a bit.
I can speak to that for a moment, because we recently had, within the last week and a half or so, kind of an interesting interaction with an incumbent ISP in the area that hadn't contacted, this is speaking from the Bishop Paiute tribe side of the house, hadn't contacted the tribe on any sort of mapping or planning inclusion or anything along those lines until they sent us some plans that they wished for the tribe to sign off on for construction permits to build out fiber optic network on the reservation. We already have our own parallel plan for something like that. And this is the first time that this vendor had ever even approached us. When they did approach us, it came with these construction permits that were on forms from the city of Bishop, which is the closest city nearby the reservation. Not far off at all, about a half a mile away. But regardless of that, it had nothing to do with the tribal government or respecting the needs of the tribe or the boundaries and sovereignty of the tribe itself. What I think they did is went to the city with these plans. The city told them, no, that's the reservation. You need to talk to the tribe. And so then they just handed the plans over to us and said, sign this, please, without any further regard for tribal sovereignty or tribal representation. It can be difficult for companies to understand that the tribes are different than municipalities. They're similar in a lot of ways, but they're different in a lot of ways too. And again, getting back to that sovereignty issue, that's a really major part of it. And it's not just about data sovereignty. It's not just about respecting the needs of the tribes and the desires of the tribes, but it's also making sure that these projects, as they go in the ground, that they belong to the tribes and that the sovereignty extends to the physical relationship with these networks also. Because any part of the reservation impacts the population of that reservation, and it's up to tribal leadership to make sure that the relationships between the tribal government and any sort of outside corporate entities that want to work with the tribes are healthy and respectful to the tribe and to the people. I think that has a lot. That says a lot about the challenges of tribal sovereignty and working with corporate partners in that way.
Anything else about sovereignty, or I can move on if not.
I'll just add one little bit. I think it's important to consider network security, especially when it comes to tribes, because there are a lot of privacy and security issues that go along with tribal communications, especially in regards to ICWA cases, EPA, environmental protection type of things, and even just interactions with other state and federal governments. A lot of folks are interested in tribal environmental data.
ICWA,
And I think also the, go ahead, Phil, go ahead.
I was just going to clarify that ICWA, for people who don't know or understand, is the Indian Child Welfare Act, and it's a legal framework by which it keeps Native children in Native homes instead of being carted off into the state or federal programs. So that in itself is an important part of sovereignty and why it was brought up. I just think probably a lot of people on this call have never heard of ICWA before, and I wanted to give that little.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Phil. That's a good clarification. I wanted to add on the security topic, Jesse. Like, this is also something I think it's important for the audience is, we're not talking just about getting access to, more people more of the community members have access and have this opportunity for learning and training and jobs and health and things, but there's also the government network aspect, right, of each tribal nation. So we want to make sure that is not only included in what we talk about, but it's also, there's some, firewalls or separations there. And I know this is one of the things where, Geeks and N50 can play a role.
I might actually throw this over a little bit to Andrew, because we hope to, be working with, entities like Etheric to help keep us safe. We do not have, as a tribe, the internal capacity or the expertise to be able to launch and protect our own network right now, but we want to work with partners who have similar core values that are willing to, help train us as we build our own infrastructure, operate our own infrastructure, and create long-term relationships with folks like that. But that side is getting a little bit out of my territory. So I mean, that's where we really rely on folks like Andrew and I9 Communications and other partners like that.
And I'll just add, our approach to that is we try to come to it with an acknowledgement and respect for the priorities of the tribe, to listen carefully, and to it's very different from dealing with different types of broadband groups, and even broadband groups in rural areas. We want to address and acknowledge the unique characteristics of the way tribal governments work and how they manage their business affairs. And so really we spend a lot of time listening rather than presenting, which is very different for us. It's been I think it's been a two-way street, Jesse. We've learned a lot from you, and we're very appreciative of that. And we're excited to partner with Numu, and also the work we've done with Lone Pine, and I think that's where it starts. I think it starts with understanding, like Jesse said, the core values and making them part of our core values as well.
Great.
I have something to add.
Please.
Yes, going back to security, one of my goals that I would like to see for tribal governmental is internal security and running our day-to-day operations with the tribe. And hopefully one day be able to have our own security, and we don't have to rely on an outside server. And our main thing is the security of our financials within our government tribal day-to-day operations and the way that we run the government here. And it's like internal controls and safety. That's a big thing. Right now, we rely on an outside server for all our daily tribal operations. And I'd like to be able to have our own and the security there. That's a future goal. So.
Again, thanks, Jenna. That's great. And Scott, our colleague Scott, just put in the chat too. I know we're there. This is an in-demand thing in the tribal context. Is cyber security solutions, and so we're sharing it with the audience here. But that also comes with an understanding of the tribal context, and so you can't just use the same terms and conditions and things like that you might use with somebody outside of the tribal context. So there's I like that two-way street reference, Andrew, there. So, I wanted to, I mean, there's a lot, we've got about 15 minutes left, and I wanted to cover two things, some from the chat. So one is John asked about workforce development and how you see that happening. I know there's been some references already, both with IBEEP and even the virtual, what do you call it? Virtual meet coordinator, which those are jobs. But how can, and this is for the, taking into account the N50 audience, is how can N50 partners in the private sector, but also other, academic, et cetera, how can they help with your workforce development digital inclusion efforts? I think we have some examples already, right? So you can use those too if
this might be a president of the Newcom style question.
I see, kicking the can down the road. All right.
Well, I think the TANF too, the TANF story, Jesse, you can bring up after.
Okay. Well,
sorry, go ahead, Phil.
Why don't you start with the TANF story, Jesse?
Okay, no problem.
Back over to you.
No problem. Well, I think we hope to be working already with some N50 partners on creating some training programs. And I believe there's already some core curriculum and a really good strong base to start from. But we really just need resources at this point in time, because it feels like as a smaller tribe or working with smaller tribes that we are not always at the front of the line when it comes to the distribution or awards of these broadband dollars. So we are already working on very limited capacity, very, very limited staffing. And as I'm sure Chairperson Hansen can attest to, while we do work with smaller tribes and we may have 1 or 2 different titles, we may have 3, 4, and 5 different responsibilities or departments that we're answerable to, and that's in addition to the community. So you know, I know everyone is busy now, but rural tribes are incredibly stretched thin. We don't have often grant writers or folks that are just 100% focused on reaching out there and pulling in as much grant dollars that we can. So that has an effect, a downstream effect on many different things. As a government that is constantly or could potentially be constantly worried about their revenue or how they're going to pay for things, that takes the focus off of vision and planning and more down into the operations, which can be distracting and time consuming for leadership who is in a vision position like Janet. So really it's, I would say, capacity, expertise, and immediate funding for capacity building projects and help, as well as expertise and guidance from N50 partners who have already done this before. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We just want to indigenize projects and customize them to our individual tribal needs as best we can. I hope that wasn't too way out there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And along those lines too, there are a lot of projects that we've already worked on with N50 partners, and we're continuing to develop in the future with N50 partners. By partnering with Dell, we were able to upgrade a lot of our tribal government computers, many of which were, you know, over 8 years old. And so that just helps to, you know, make a more stable and productive workforce here in the tribal government offices. We're also continuing to work with developing some plans with Intel on building out some computer lab projects. That's continuing to move forward. And with the Barbara Bush Foundation in trying to build some digital literacy projects that we can take out to the community and bring these trainings into the community at large instead of having people have to come, you know, to our own facility and do. So, you know, all of these efforts taken together kind of make a big overall sort of holistic view of digital inclusion that goes all the way from top level governmental and tribal sovereignty issues, clear down to you know, helping grandmas and aunties get online so that they can do their Christmas shopping. It encompasses all of that. Oh, Jesse, you're muted.
I would say that our experience already working with N50 and contributions from N50 partners, y'all are very massive corporations and entities, and even the smallest bits of help and resources that have already been provided to small tribes have had major impacts. I know Janet can attest to that as well when she just referenced the Lone Pine tribe passing a virtual voting policy. I mean, this thing is historic, and it will have major impacts on all the governments in our region. It already is. The communities are looking towards what's happening in Lone Pine in that way with networks and building out these partnerships. And it's very exciting. And just, I mean, as an example, I mean, our network was made possible from our, you know, partnerships with existing N50 partners like Intel and Dell, and I believe, you know, Cisco and Geeks Without Frontiers. I mean, vital equipment, critical to our network core, even up to the radios and things that we broadcast with, you know, from Freedom Fi and Teltech and things like that. It's changing lives. It's having massive impacts. And what we're seeing now is, even as small tribes, when we gather together, we are mighty. And we do have things to offer in terms of being powerful partners, specifically our government to government or our supposed government to government relations with the BIA and federal entities. We appreciate you all, and we look forward to building with you guys, because when we all get together, when all of these tribes get together, you're going to see, and I absolutely believe this, some very creative, very innovative uses of these networks, and it'll have massive impact not only on the people, but the land and the water here as well.
Thanks, Jesse. If there's no other comment there, I'm going to pick up the question to Andrew from the chat. You want to touch on that, Andrew, about how you look at tribal business? You mentioned already a little bit, but are there parallels with other, I would say, potential customer bases out there?
Are there between tribal and other customers?
Well, just
Well,
how you look at the tribal business versus the rest of the business, I guess.
Well, we're a rural internet service provider, so our customers are all in on the other side of the digital divide, and the places where we're going have similar needs to what the tribal groups have. So when we are looking at expanding in very rural areas in Northern California, one of the, we participated in the training day that Phil mentioned, training people to climb towers, but we're looking at, as we're growing into these areas, to form partnerships with community colleges and other groups to train people to have these digital skills. So that's important for providing resources and education and training for tribal groups, but the same in economically depressed rural areas and other groups as well. So there are a lot of people trying to do a lot of great work in California, and a lot of tribal groups we've talked to have done a lot of work for a long time trying to do some planning for building broadband infrastructure. And so we've tried to come to it with an approach that we want to recognize all the work you've already done and all the effort that's already been in it. How can we dovetail with you? How can we work with you to advance your goals, and how they fit with what we're trying to do, and how we can use our resources to work together.
I would say, Andrew, that's a great thing for everyone to hear. And I think Etheric is a good example for any N50 partners. If I could just be quick and brief, they approach everything like a student. They don't come in with all the solutions and the answers. At least that's our experience with them. They're very much listeners, receptive, and try to learn as much as they can about us, and then come back and roll around ideas. It's a great approach to working with tribes that Etheric and Andrew have.
I'll second that, just to say that I had planned on mentioning something along those lines, but Jesse, you covered it completely. We've been really happy with our interactions with Etheric also, and we think that they understand where we're coming from in terms of wanting to maintain our tribal sovereignty, and also in terms of our long-term planning. From our talks with Etheric, it sounds like they understand that anything that we wish to work on, we have a long-term goal. We're looking out for generations and not just for a few profitable quarters.
Okay. Well, good. So we're nearing the end of our hour here. We got 4 minutes. What I'd like to do is give each of you the opportunity to cover any topic or any notes that you wanted to cover, but also, jump in on something you heard. So please. You're on mute.
Or I muted, sorry guys. I'll just say thanks to all the N50 partners for participating, for listening. We've had just an amazing experience working with everyone there, especially Geeks has been extremely accommodating, especially with, again, when we mentioned we have not a lot of capacity and resources. It's been amazing what we can do with y'all. And so I guess if I can plug, check out my SoundCloud. Go to, I'll put this in the chat, newcom.org. That is our coalition, that is our group of tribes that we have established so far, and we're growing. I'll put in our nonprofit NumuNetworks, where we work directly with Lone Pine and look out and try to help other tribes maintain and sustain their own, not only their own networks, but build out and own their own infrastructure. So I'll put that in the chat and just say thanks to everyone here today. Appreciate it.
I thought it would be a good time to take a moment to just mention how earlier in the conversation we had talked about some of our traditional resources, the land, the water, and the people. And we at New Communication Alliance are hoping that we can establish broadband, specifically tribal broadband, as a new traditional resource that we can share through the tribes throughout the region and beyond, as a way to help strengthen our intertribal relationships and to help to establish stronger communities.